Hi guys, welcome back to Reality Authority. This is episode 2. We're still talking about The Quest. We just watched episode 2. We're a little bit late. And I think the first thing we wanted to talk about, why do you look so awkward?
Do you know me?
I think we wanted to jump right in and talk about the introductions as they're known. The first half of them, I think that we both agree that the first part of the introduction, they're kind of giving a whole lot of detail and they're kind of introducing the whole series for every episode.
Not only is it introducing a lot of detail, but it's the same information as the previous episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same clips.
So anyone who had seen the first episode is going to see that again, and it's not intended to be production quality stuff. It's just like an overall expose thing that I would have expected to see only on the first episode.
The second part of the introduction was really interesting. We had a problem last episode where we didn't really understand a lot that was going on and who they might be talking about and why there was a war, but we learned a lot in the second part of the introduction.
I remember specifically the dragon part was really cool with the fire breathing.
Yeah.
I think that happened.
It happened. You weren't hallucinating this time.
I'll remember more details as the show goes on.
The intermixing between the art and the video was really interesting, and I think they pulled that off really well. So this show is so interesting because it's a reality show, but it's really based on a storyline that is outside of the reality, and it's a really interesting concept, and we wanted to spend a few minutes talking about how well they're pulling that off and how they're pulling that off. The first example that kind of jumped out at me was the fact that right after they met the Queen, the guy comes in, he's injured from the front lines. It adds some story, it adds some a compelling aspect to the video, and something that was completely unnecessary game-wise, but I think added a whole lot.
Yeah, I think one of the things we were both wondering after the first episode was like how much of the narrative exposition was only intended to kind of like set up the storyline, and then, you know, maybe it would be sparser as the game went on. But I think what we're finding is that it's becoming more and more dense.
Another example of that was the head of the army and the Grand Vizier and the tension between the two. And this was specifically at the challenge. That was a really interesting, it was like a 2-second flare up between the two. It added so much depth to the the dialogue between the characters. It was a really interesting aspect.
Yeah, there were a few instances where both the trainer and the vizier had their own little like quirks with each other and then with other members of the cast. And they're kind of like, they weren't very likable people in the first episode, but I think they're like trying to humanize them a little more in this episode.
To add to his point, the very last thing that we saw in the episode, and if you watch Big Brother and Survivor, The Amazing Race, all of the competitive reality shows, the last thing you see is someone leaving. And in this show, because they have a storyline to build, it wasn't the last thing we saw, and instead it was a continuation of the story, something that we'll chat about later. But it was very powerful.
Yeah, I think especially with the kind of understanding that with most reality shows where there is an elimination, the last thing you see is the elimination. It kind of caused a bit of like pleasant surprise in us.
I don't know if you watched Lord of the Rings, chances are that you have. It was kind of a similar effect. With Lord of the Rings, there are probably like 10 times per movie where you're like, okay, time to wait a minute. But in this case, it was only an hour long, so it was actually a really good effect, I think.
Right.
And how can we talk about this episode without talking about the drama that was the last few seconds of the show? So,
the drama might be an understatement.
Yeah, right? So totally game-changing already. Who killed the Queen? Assuming that she's dead. We don't know that for sure.
Yeah, she was poisoned.
Right, we didn't see her die, but who killed her? I mean, the obvious pick is...
I think it's, well, obviously the Vizier
right.
would be the obvious choice, which might mean that it's someone else, and
right.
the Vizier is either just a huge dick. Can I say that?
I don't know.
Right.
We'll find out.
He is a rooster of a person.
And a cock.
Someone else might be kind of pulling the strings from behind him.
So we had a suspicion pretty early on that the Grand Vizier was an insider, that there might be something going on. This was well before the last scene of this episode. And if you'll notice, if you go back and watch, when he meets the table, when he comes to greet everyone, right there at the last scene, the music changes and it gets really dramatic and a little more sad. It was very happy before that. So are we being led to believe that he's the killer, or is he actually the killer and it is just really obvious? He walked right by her drink. So there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you in episode 3, let you know what we think. Moving topics, we're going to move into the voting system. The voting system to me is really interesting as a student of reality shows. It's very clear from all of the reality shows what you're supposed to do. You vote your competition out. You want to win. You want to get to the finals. You make alliances, that kind of thing. This show, there is no overt prize. There is no reason to win other than the story of winning. And because of that, there's this weird tension in the people, and individually and as a team, I think, in terms of, who do we vote out? Do you vote out your competitions? Do you vote out the strong people so your chance of winning is better? Or do you vote out the weaker people or the people that don't fit the storyline as well?
Although the fact that scheming was mentioned by Jasmine in regards to Christian, there hasn't really been any scheming in terms of forming alliances and trying to undermine the game play of other players. It's almost like the metagame is as off limits as it would be in a D&D campaign. She's
got his number. I'm totally going off topic, but Jasmine's got Christian. Christian's not going anywhere without her. I'm just saying, she's watching him.
She seems a lot shorter than I thought she was in the first episode.
Short as in height?
Like a hobbit.
Oh my god.
What?
You just called Jasmine a hobbit.
Well, when she was sitting on the bed, right? She was like this, and her feet were off the ground.
Right.
And that gave her a very hobbit halfling
it's
appearance.
It's a castle. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, the bed's probably bigger than it should be, but to me, that frame.
Jasmine, you're the most lovable hobbit that we know. It's time to rank the paladins. It's everyone's favorite part of the show, and I guess we'll just jump right in and start with number 11, and that is Letitia.
Oops.
Yeah. So first of all, if you lose your Sun Spear, chances are you're not going to do very well in the ranking this week.
I spent 5 minutes wondering if they were just going to eliminate her on the spot.
Number 10 is Ashley. Again, the people that get voted out seem to do really poorly with us. I don't know why. Ashley, she had skills and didn't really show them. Yeah, I mean, she didn't totally bungle the skills she had either. I have decided that she's definitely a druid. Because, remember, we didn't have a class for her last time. I decided she's definitely a druid because of her connection to horses. Right. She's kind of a defeatist. That's what kind of pissed me off. When you're in a reality show, you can't give up. Number 9, Patrick. Don't have a lot to say. He wasn't really covered this episode, and I still think he's boring. Yeah, I think between this episode and the last episode, he might be the least covered person. Number 8, Adria. My opinion didn't really change. She's a little forced, and she seems like a big personality, but she's not, to me, likable so far. Yeah, I mean, definitely the downside to having very deliberate delivery of all of your monologue to the camera is the fact that sometimes you're not going to say what you need to say. Number 6 is actually tied, so we're about halfway up now. This is a tie between Christian and Andrew. Christian fell all the way from 1st to 6th this episode. Because he rattled. I think that he's so passionate about winning this game and the show that it's getting to him. And for me, Andrew is a meathead, and he proved it this episode. We also have a tie for 3rd, a 3-way tie for 3rd. That's why the last 2 were 6th. That 3-way tie is Jim, Lena, and Shando. Jim, for me, I love Jim. I had him number 1 this week. There's no one that is more into the storyline than he is. I don't think there's anyone that wants to win more than he does, except for maybe Christian. Jim is a really genuine nerd and a genuine person. Yeah, I think there are contestants who buy into the narrative and not the gameplay, like Bonnie or Adria. And then there are contestants that buy into the gameplay but not the narrative, like Shando. But Jim is kind of the middle ground there, where he really buys into both. Right. Lena, I'll let you take Lena first. Yeah, I mean, she wasn't covered as much this episode as last episode. Her positive aspects from last episode just carried over for me to this episode because she, Totally agree. Next up is Shando. He's also tied for 3rd. Why don't you start with that one too? Yeah, so I mentioned that he is not invested in the narrative as much as the gameplay, clearly. I mean, he's just That's true.
He's using all of his lead speed.
You can tell the people that were picked not because they were really into fantasy, but more so that they were a physical specimen. I think Andrew and Shonda both kind of fit that mold, and Shonda for sure. He's really into competing.
Yeah, what was Shondo's nickname for Jim? It was Jimbo.
Jimbo Slice. We're pulling for you.
Yeah.
Second place is Bonnie. We really enjoy Bonnie. She's a genuine person. She's into the fantasy. She's a lot of fun.
I think that her doing as poorly in this challenge didn't really hinder her likability at all because she handled the failure really well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And still ended up out of bottom 3. So
and she was really crushed that she didn't do well too.
Right.
So that to me, when you show that kind of dedication for wanting to win the show, that's awesome to watch. Our new number 1 this week is Jasmine.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, so we kind of predicted last week that she would be likable, she would have a great personality, but she wasn't really talking a whole lot, or she wasn't really covered a whole lot. And this week she proved it. She killed it. She was great in the competition. She was great. She was like genuine, but also intelligent. I loved her.
She's the real paladin, where Patrick is just kind of faking it.
We hope that you had a great time. We hope you enjoyed episode 2. Episode 3 will be up next week by Saturday. Please subscribe and like and thumbs up and comment and get involved. We really enjoy that a lot. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Kurt_Worth, KURT_WIRTH. And his is
COLGRUV, Colgrove.
That's his call sign. So, all right, guys, appreciate it. Hope you had fun, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.